Hey guys, I'm back on the Forerunner server again, and this time I want to show you another hero, which is Kai. He is a piercer marksman, and yeah, let's dive into it. Let's have a look what he can do. So we'll start in hero details. He has a pretty good attack range. He has an extra dot, an extra square forward than most heroes do, so that's quite nice. He has pretty average HP, 11.1k. A lot of them fall around the 11k mark. His attack is just over 4k, which is a little bit better than average. A lot of them are around 3.8k up to around 4.2k. So that's a decent attack for a marksman. It's a pretty decent attack. He has a cost of 22, which is quite high. And he has an attack interval of 3.5. This is quite a high attack interval, but otherwise pretty good. High cost though, high attack interval. Those are the two concerns at the moment. I have not looked at him at all yet. So to start things off, let's look at his talent. Every 15 seconds, the next basic attack is changed into placing one wirearm snare. So, wirearm snare triggers when enemies pass by, so I guess similar to Kook's trap, dealing 100% damage up to 3 enemies, and it inflicts immobilize for 3 seconds. So 100% damage to 3 enemies, and it immobilizes all 3 enemies for 3 seconds. When triggered in advance by cluster projectile, I'm guessing his ult, it deals 150% AoE damage to up to 5 enemies in a larger range, and it's a 5-second immobilize instead, and it's consumed upon activation. So it's a snare, a pretty long snare to be honest. 3 or 5-second immobilize is pretty huge. It may not sound that strong at first hearing, but if you think about the content where you're using marksman, immobilizers are very valuable. In Gear Raid 3, a lot of the time you need to stop enemies getting to a certain point. They kind of swarm you. And the immobilizers are really powerful. Lunaria has an immobilize in her 5th awakening, and I find it to be very useful. So I think Wirearm Snare is not that bad. Cluster Projectile, I'm guessing, is the ult that will proc it and blast it in an area and snare up to 5 enemies, 150% AoE damage. I think it's pretty good. It sounds pretty good. The rest of the talent. The snare lasts at most 30 seconds, and it deals 25% extra damage to enemies afflicted with immobilize. Fair enough. So let's have a look at his actual skills. The first one is 100% up to 5 enemies. So he hits 5 enemies in range, which is pretty nice. It doesn't say AoE. I can never really tell if this counts as AoE damage or just damage. Then his ultimate, okay, it's not the one I thought it was, Doomsday Cluster. 900 rage cap goes down to 700 rage cap, starting 400 rage, manually activated, launches a cluster projectile. Okay, never mind, it is the thing I think it was. It fires a cluster projectile at one enemy in range, causing an explosive impact upon contact. The explosion deals 350% up to 500% AoE damage to up to 8 nearby enemies. So 350 to 500% AoE damage is pretty good. And after detonating, it splits into 3 small bombs. And after a short delay, the small bombs detonate, each dealing 100 to 150% AoE damage to up to 5 nearby enemies. And these can trigger the wirearm snares within the radius. So let's see, 700 rage cap is actually quite low. That's a pretty decent rage cap. It's not crazy low, but it's low. 700 is low. And 500% AoE nuke is pretty good. 500% to 8 enemies is pretty nice. I like that. And then we have 3 bombs dealing 150% damage each to 5 enemies. That's pretty good. So it's potentially 950% AoE damage and proccing the wirearm snare for another 100% or 150% because it's procced by the cluster projectile. So that's a pretty good combo. You let him place it in Gear Raid 3 at the front. Then you use his ultimate when a bunch of enemies are coming. It does a 950% AoE damage nuke. It's a bit staggered. And then it snares them all, as well as dealing another 150%, and they're snared or immobilized for 5 seconds, at least up to 5 enemies. I think that's pretty good. I like that. I think that's a pretty cool combo to pull off. Then we have his first passive, Doomsday Reprise. Doomsday Cluster has a 20% chance of an immediate second cast being ready after each cast. This can only be triggered once every 20 seconds, so it becomes a 35% chance that whenever he uses his ultimate, it immediately becomes ready again, and there's a 20-second cooldown, so you can't infinitely do it if you're lucky. That seems pretty crazy to me. That seems really, really good. Like, that could really change runs. Also, his attack range is really quite good as well. He is a piercer, but if you don't have a piercer lord, then he can actually reach the front in the Gear Raid 3. So that's really good. So he definitely feels like a really good Gear Raid 3 hero to me, just immediately. Snaring enemies in AoE is super good for such a long duration as well. He's also a chance to just burst damage twice, and it's quite good burst damage too. And he hits in AoE, so I think he'll be really good in Gear Raid 3. And finally, Eradication Protocol. Upon triggering his wirearm snare, so his talent, it then grants him 20% crit rate as well as 60% crit damage at max skill, 40% without, for 6 to 8 seconds. It cannot be stacked if you trigger multiple wirearm snares. Oh, okay, I overlooked that. So he can have 2 wirearm snares at once because of the duration. So yeah, you can trigger both of them at the same time. That's pretty cool. That's interesting. That's cool. He can buff himself to get a load of crit rate, a load of crit damage. Seems pretty good. It seems pretty good. A lot of damage in this kit. A lot of AoE in this kit. And honestly, the Immobilize is the thing that I'm most interested in. So I can understand him being so expensive, because otherwise he would be insane. So my first thought would be to place him in the middle in gear raid 3. And I think that's mainly where you would use him. You could use him on the left lane as well in the later stages to deal with that side. I think he could work there. I think he might have enough AoE, but maybe not. Maybe you still want to use a Razak or a Maul. It's a bit easier. I definitely would try him in gear raid 3. It seems to be his area. I think his design is pretty cool as well. I don't think I mentioned that, but he definitely looks like he's straight out of Monster Hunter. He's killed many Rathaloses and finished farming his gear setup. I guess this is a light bowgun, not a heavy bowgun. Anyway, I like his design. It looks pretty cool. And he does look very useful. I really, really do like Immobilizers in these kits. Immobilize buys you so much time in tough airborne content, so I'm a big fan of this. He is very expensive. That's the one big hang-up. Without the cost, I think he's insanely good. He also has a 3.5 attack interval, so this is not as crazy as it sounds. But hey, we can knock that down with some good gear. So first impressions, he seems really good. And I like the trap mechanism. I like the way the ult activates it. I think this is a really cool design for a hero mechanically as well as visually. So I'm a fan of Kai so far. I think they did a good job with that. So let's move on to his awakenings. First awakening. Each cluster projectile launched by Doomsday Cluster inflicts burning upon explosion. So just some more damage into his ultimate. And it's 20% damage for 5 seconds, so it becomes 100% bonus magic damage per second. Burning is worth having, it's a nice little additional damage, so hey, why not? Second awakening is attack. Third awakening decreases the interval by 5 seconds for his wirearm snare, so I think he can now have just about 3 down at the same time, I think is what it means, right? And when triggered, they will apply a 20% defense break. This is actually so much better than it sounds. This is actually crazy good. Gear raid 3 is where I really would like to try to use him, and they have really high resistance. So fourth awakening is 5% penetration. It's not crazy, but it helps. It does add some more damage. 5% is quite nice. It's kind of similar to 5% attack. And awakening 5 is enhancing his Doomsday Cluster ultimate. It doubles the amount of small bombs. So rather than 3, there becomes 6, each one dealing 150% damage. So yeah, that's a lot more damage. It's 450% more AoE damage from Awakening 5. Overall, Kai seems pretty great. He seems like he has some great damage. He has some crazy attack range for someone who's going to be in the Piercer faction. This is similar to Razak, I believe. He applies Immobilize, which is fantastic. He does loads of AoE damage. He can self-buff with crit rate, and more importantly, crit damage, as most people will have the crit rate threshold met. Overall, Kai seems really good. My only hang up is his cost. 20 cost heroes are always tough to use. He's obviously not going to be a guild boss hero focused on immobilizing and AoE damage. His main use is going to be Gear Raid 3, as well as probably the Void Rift, but there's not a lot of airborne content in the Void Rift. There's a very few stages currently. At the moment, we're lacking some really hard content for airborne heroes, for marksmen or anti-air heroes, other than Gear Raid 3. So at the moment, I'd say he's predominantly really good in Gear Raid 3. But he still immobilizes. This is still AoE immobilize for multiple targets. Maybe he's good in other content as well. I think if you're having trouble holding waves back, then he'll be pretty decent. Yeah, I'm curious. I think he seems pretty good. On the face of it, I'm quite impressed with Kai. I like his kit. It seems interesting. It seems different. I like the snares. I like the bonuses. That's it. That's all I can think to cover with Kai. Again, I haven't had a chance to play him yet. I haven't heard anything about him yet either. I do think he'll be a monster in Gear Raid 3 if you can find a timing to place him, because he is quite expensive. Anyway, I'm going to cap the video off there. And yeah, hopefully he comes to the global server soon. I think a lot of people would love to see him. So thank you guys for watching. I hope it was interesting. And yeah, all the best. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.